on, guys? This is Yix here of Magnum Crypto, and welcome back to another video. So today's video I'm going to be talking about the Bitcoin halving, a very key event in crypto world. I'm going to be talking about what it is and what to expect, basically what to expect coming up to it in the next 2 weeks, and what to expect kind of after it, and how long it will take for price to rise, and if there's retracements, things like this. So first and foremost, the Bitcoin halving is a key event that happens in Bitcoin, where basically the block rewards half from 12.5 to 6.25. And what does this mean? Very simple. It means that if you're a miner, if you wanted to mine Bitcoin, which is basically to solve computational equations, very complicated equations that you need computers to solve, then the amount of rewards you get, so 12.5 Bitcoins would halve. So every time you complete the same amount of work, you'd get half the amount of Bitcoin back. So very simple. Basically, the supply rate decreases. So very simple economics. You would imagine supply decreases and the price increases. But it's obviously not that simple. It doesn't happen that quickly. But that is what the Bitcoin halving is. And because Bitcoin is the dominant force within crypto, it has a market share of around 60%. You know, this is going to affect the whole market massively. And, you know, the effects are felt everywhere within that. And also, it's a much anticipated event, so you know it attracts a lot of attention from the outside, which is good, because essentially more speculation, more people looking to invest. You know, the more money that goes in, the more price starts to advance. But yes, that's a little description of what the Bitcoin halving is. I want to go through two things in this video. One very good article from Rect Capital, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and I'll put the link in the description of the full article, because it talks about the prior Bitcoin halvings, and it really goes into detail as to what happened, you know, the kind of retracements, how long it took for the price to go back to all-time high afterwards, things like this. And also a video from Anthony Popoliano, a very popular crypto influencer and investor. He brought on this mining consultant, I believe. I don't actually know his job, but he knows a lot about mining, and he's done a lot of modeling on mining incentives and things of this nature. So this is going to really provide a lot of insight into this, you know, Bitcoin halving. So let's get started. Firstly, we have the article from Rect Capital. Again, I'll put the link in the description. I highly recommend you read this. Fantastic research, fantastic article, really detailed. So there's been two halvings in the past, and he goes over both. And you can see, basically, I'm going to skim through it. You're going to have to read it all yourself, but I'm going to skim through it. So you can see in the first Bitcoin halving, or Bitcoin halving, there's two ways they say it. I don't know if it's halving or halvening, but halving is quicker, so I'm going to say that. So you can see that the bottom was reached pre-halving, so just before the halving, which is this, 378 days before. So this is the lowest point it reached, 378 days before. From the bottom to the top, so again, so the bottom was at this point, basically a year before, and from that point to the next all-time high, it appreciated by 13,000% or 13,300%, and the top was reached 133 days after the halving. So you can see it's, you know, about 4 to 5 months after the halving is when it reached its top. So you can see the kind of time scale, but this is the first halving, so it was very early days, November 2012, 3 years after the inception. You know, very early days. Again, it goes into a lot of detail, so again, really, you should read this. The second halving, which was much more recent and much more fresh in people's minds, a lot more people got involved in this one. So the bottom was reached 544 days before halving. Before the halving, bottom was reached, and from that point to the top, it was 12,160% increase from the bottom to the top. Now, let's be realistic. Not a lot of people are gonna, get in at the bottom, but you can see how much it appreciated by. And the all-time high after the halving was 524 days. So there's a lot more detail. Again, as I said, key takeaways. One thing he does mention, which is very true, is that the all-time high, or the most of the gain, happens after the halving, right? Obviously, you won't gain as much as if you got in at the bottom or near the bottom, but still, most of it happens after the halving. So let me go to, another key takeaway. You can see it took twice as long in the first one to the second one, which is very important because it's never going to be the same. And the third time, it could either be much longer, so much longer than even the second halving, so more than a year and a half, could be 2 years, or it could be a bit shorter. So it's very hard to, obviously you cannot predict these things. You kind of use this data to make an educated guess. And now he's looking at the third halving, which is happening next month, very, very soon, a couple of weeks, 2 weeks. It looks like the bottom has been reached, and 518 days, so less than the second halving. The bottom was reached early 2019, 3,152, and so potentially, let's say potentially, he goes into this detail as well. It's looking like the third halving is much more similar to the second halving. So you see here there was a retracement of 38% pre-halving. This is 2016, and it seems like we're doing the same thing currently. So we've done the retracement prior to the halving. So let's just go to the summary here, and again, I would recommend you read the full article because it's very, very, very well researched. Big shout out to Rect Capital. I'm going to put the article in the description because it's really, really good, really well written. Summary of it though: most of the exponential growth in Bitcoin's price as a result of the halving occurs after it, so after the halving in 2 weeks, and that's what's happened in the last two halvings. Bitcoin's price is set a new all-time high after every halving, and again, in terms of how long it took, the first time it took about 130 days, second one took about 500 something days. So another good one. If Bitcoin rallies less pre-halving, it will rally more post-halving. So if there's less of a price gain just before the halving, there'll be much more of a price gain after it. And there's always been a retrace prior to each halving, which is what we've had so far. So how could Bitcoin's third halving affect Bitcoin's price? Just to sum it up, there's no way to predict the future. You can only use the history, past historical points to kind of roughly understand what could happen. So you should never use data that happened in the past as a guarantee that will happen again. Otherwise everyone would be rich because they would just do that. So there's no way to guarantee anything, but it's looking like it's behaving much more similar to the second halving. So the bottom was reached, a long time ago in 2019, and that was the same as the second halving. So it could be the case that after this halving, it could take about a year and a half plus for the next all-time high to be reached. Here's an interesting prediction that he makes. If we're to use the prior price data, then it could rally about 12 to 13,000% from the bottom. So if you were to hit the $3,150 bottom in mid-December 2018, then that would result in a $385,000 per Bitcoin price. Or if it was the 13,000% rally, then it would result in a $425,000 per Bitcoin price. And he makes, comparison to the gold market. So very, very interesting article, backed by some good data, which is the last two halvings. As always, it's not a prediction. You can it's hard to predict these things. There's no such thing as a guarantee. But as I said, you can use the past to kind of guess what could happen. So, you need to navigate with those guesses. So that's it for this article. Again, it'll be in the link in the description. The next one, I want to look at this video by Pump. Highly recommend you watch the full video. He's got a couple of interviews with this guy, and let's talk about miners incentives. So I'm just going to play it.
No, that's a great question. In our report, we model all that out. We have these large tables in the research report, these Excel tables, and that's exactly what we're doing. We understand how much electricity is being consumed by each layer based on their margins. So if you're running RAS 17 at 6 cents, you might be consuming $80 worth of electricity per month, and you may be making 120 in revenue. So you know that you have to sell $80 of your 120, which is, I believe, 75%, right? No, 66%, right? So their margins are 33%, and they have to sell 66% of their electricity if they're at, for example, 6 cents. And then if they're at 5 cents, maybe they only have to sell 50%. And if they're at 3 cents, they only have to sell 30%. And that's what's key. And, you brought that up, and that's what's so helpful for the network. When these miners who are operating almost at break even and have to sell 80 to 100% of their Bitcoin blow out, and now their Bitcoin is getting allocated to these efficient miners who only have to sell 30%, well, they're holding more Bitcoin. Sell pressure comes off the network. A lot of people think that Bitcoin trades a couple billion a day. That's what's important. That's inaccurate. A majority of that is fake Asian trading. It's algos. It's day trading. That just creates short-term volatility. What moves the price of an asset is net fiat in and net fiat out. And that's what, and we're interested in the intermediate to long term.
So, I highly recommend you watch all of this because he really goes into a bit more detail about that. But as you can hear from what he's saying, he's essentially saying that obviously Bitcoin miners they consume a lot of electricity when they mine Bitcoin. So they have to sell a lot of that Bitcoin to pay for that electricity, and then the rest is somewhat profit. And this is a lot of selling pressure on the Bitcoin price, because the more they sell, the more price kind of gets pushed downwards, because they want to get the cash for the Bitcoin. So they're taking money out of this equation essentially, and for price to increase, you need money to be staying either in, or for more money for net increase in fiat in. So what he's saying is going to happen is, after the Bitcoin halving in a few weeks, a lot of the inefficient miners will not be able to stay up anymore because they're running at very small margins. So they'll be closing off, and the efficient miners who are able who don't have to sell as much Bitcoin as they do will be the ones to survive and carry on operation. And because they don't have to sell as much as the less efficient miners, essentially there's less selling pressure within the equation. So less money is coming out of this equation, which essentially would increase the price because less money is going in, and also there's more demand coming in, more speculation, more people wanting to put their money in, and this was obviously going to increase the price, because at its simplest point, as he said, it's the thing that increases the price is more money going in than money coming out. So if these less efficient miners shut down and the efficient miners stay in the game and they sell less, there's gonna be less money coming out. So that's going to increase the price essentially. And that even just the fact that there's less selling pressure, that's going to increase the price by a certain degree. Don't know how much. But then you've got, on top of that, all the extra money that will be coming in from demand, from popularity, from just the event that this is, the Bitcoin halving, all this extra demand and fiat that will come into the equation. That's going to cause an increase in price, essentially. So very simple. I hope that I've simplified that enough. But that's what to expect from the Bitcoin halving event. I hope you got some value from that. I will put the link in the description for both those two items that I used. And if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And for now, peace out.